Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. Another week with you guys. Today, we take a closer look at the stories shaping our communities and our future, going past the surface and into the context, the impact, and the conversations that matter.
In every episode, we move past what's trending and examine what the headlines truly mean for everyday Filipinos.
I'm Mildred Galarpe.
And I'm DJ Moises.
Today, we're focusing on a growing concern in Cebu, the ongoing flooding problem, and why existing flood control projects may not be enough to address it. Communities continue to experience disruptions, raising questions about what solutions are truly needed.
To help us understand the situation better, we'll be speaking with William Granert, Executive Director of the Soil and Water Conservation Foundation Incorporated. He will share his insights on why current efforts may fall short and what approaches could lead to more lasting improvements.
Good afternoon, Sir William.
Hi, good afternoon to both of you.
Good
Okay.
afternoon.
Yes. It's been a long time since, DJ, before when I was still a reporter, Sir William, or we fondly called him Bill, and his wife Ida were our regular sources and as far as water problems are concerned. So it's nice to see you again, Bill.
It's been a while.
Yes, to kick off our conversations this morning, I think it would be best for you to explain what the foundation is all about.
Okay, the Soil and Water Conservation Foundation is actually in its 37th year.
See?
We were founded in 1988 by a group of consultants. I was working with DNR at that time in the Rain-Fed Resources Development Project. And we had a problem with the bureaucracy in the project. If you ordered a kilo of seed, by the time it got there, the seed was not viable. So we said, we'll set up a type of foundation in order to assist the local people in sort of shortcutting, getting rid of some of the red tape. So we started in 1988. We started with 3 watershed projects that were funded by Rotary International. At that time, we had a contact in Vancouver, who was one of the district governors. And so we had the Mananga watershed, the Manhuyad watershed in Negros Oriental, and part of the Bago River system in the other side, in the occidental side. The Bago River is so big, we only took a very small portion and that led up to the slopes of Kanlaon volcano. So we started with that. It was interesting because we didn't have an accounting system. So the one who got us the money from CEDA, the Canadian government agency, and Rotary International, put in a computerized system. So we were actually one of the first NGOs in Cebu that actually had a computerized system. And we taught a number of other NGOs how to use the system, and we gave it to them with the thing. There was no royalty on it or whatnot. It's to make it a little more efficient was the thing. So anyway, we started with that, and I think we're at a project 102 now in the full time that we've gone into it. The largest project, monetary wise, has been close to $1 million, and the average is about $40,000. I'm not going to give you a peso amount because the peso keeps changing.
Yes.
So it depends upon what time you're talking to me.
Yes.
But anyway, we generally work with grassroots communities, not so much in the urban areas, although there are a number of NGOs that we partner with when we're doing this. So when we go into a community, we try to have the community invite us in, rather than going in there and saying that, here we are, we have something to do, you want to do it. We go in there and we actually spend about a week planning the project with them, and then making sure that we don't try to do everything at once. We start with one thing and what's successful. And for us, it's always been potable water. Because when you deal with potable water, you automatically deal with health issues. You deal with livestock that's healthier. You deal with reduction in labor of hauling the water, and of course the skin diseases and the time that's lost from the farm area itself. And very few people argue with clean water. So it's easier to get into the community. And then we go into different things like agroforestry or crop production systems. Soil conservation, of course, is the basic, because if you lose your soil, you lose your resource of where you're going to do your planting and whatnot. So we've introduced contour farming that we had. And if you look, we were, one of our major sites was in Guba, in Cebu City and the surrounding barangays there. So a lot of the contours that you see there were actually ones that were started by our farmers. And then we had a site in Argao, up in the mountains there, and then one eventually in Pinamungahan, and then one outside Legazpi of all places, because we had a representative that we trained that moved there, and they asked us to come in. So we've been in regions 6, 7, 10, 11, and 5, although we concentrate on Cebu and Bohol now with what we're doing. And our present projects deal with biodiversity conservation as a way to address climate change, either mitigation or adaptation. So the higher the biodiversity, the better chance you have to succeed in dealing with the aberrations that you have. You saw one of them, which is the cause of the flooding now. If you remember Odette, when it came around, it had very heavy winds but little rain. This one had winds that were less strong than Odette, but it had the rain on it with the thing. So I think Mactan recorded 18 centimeters of rain, although when you get into the mountains, it's probably considerably higher than that. And one site in Toledo City had 48 centimeters, which is almost a half a meter of rain. So anyway, we'll get to that a little bit later. But we deal with strengthening the rural communities in natural resource management. We also work in protected area management. My wife was a member of the executive committee of Central Cebu Protected Landscape up until last year, when it started in 2008. And before that, we were in the Mananga watershed with the projects that we have there for the thing. So it depends upon where we are and the interest. And the one we do in Bohol now is with DRRM, or Disaster Risk Reduction Management, but dealing at the planning at the barangay level. We found out that a lot of the plans that are actually come from the barangay are, you fill out a 30-page checklist, and that's your plan. And then when something comes along with an emergency, nobody knows what to do. So it takes us about a year to make up a plan with the community, including biodiversity conservation, protection. Most of our areas are on what we call karst landscapes, which most of Cebu is karst. People are familiar with the term anapog.
Yes.
Limestone, rather than karst is an international term that they have for limestone. And if you look on a map, it looks like areas where you have hollow blocks in the design of the map. If you look at a geology map, that's the limestone area.
Okay.
So we teach that.
So that's 37 years working with communities. So in your opinion, and this is for the benefit of ordinary Cebuanos who experience the typhoon, how would you describe what happened during the day of the flood?
Okay, well, for one thing, all of the water comes from the watersheds. And to look at the watershed, you have to think about Plangana with the hole in the side, which is the one river that empties. So like if you have the Mananga watershed, you have the Mananga River, which goes through Talisay and part of Cebu City. Or the Kotkot watershed, which goes through the boundary of Liloan and Compostela. And then the Luceran River, which are the major ones, which goes out through Balamban. So it depends upon, you have to think of it as a unit. This is the one thing that we have problems with. The thing is they try to divide the unit into sections. And you can't do that because I'm afraid water doesn't recognize political boundaries.
Correct. Bill,
So yeah.
You mentioned earlier that the outflows, it goes to Talisay and part of Cebu City, the boundaries of Liloan and Compostela and Balamban. All these
Yeah.
places were really affected by the typhoon. So, what does, when in fact, all these areas have flood control projects, from 2016 to 2025, within these four water river systems, Mananga, Butuanon, Kotkot, and Lusaran, there's about 10.6 billion of flood control projects. So it did not help?
Well, I'll give you the example that I've seen of the one in Liloan, and you have to look at the river naturally has what they call a floodplain, and this is where the excess water goes. So as it comes down the mountain, it spreads out and then eventually works its way into the ocean. However, what we do in many countries is that you use it as a real estate area. So you build communities on it. And when you build a community on it, you essentially waterproof the area, either cement roads or rooftops, if you take the composite of all the ways in which the water is prevented. So that water has to go somewhere. It's not going to stay there and be happy sitting in somebody's backyard and whatnot. It'll move out. So what happens is that, like in Liloan, from what I understand, whoever the engineers were in there, they changed the course of the river. They made the floodplain smaller, and then they tried to channelize the river, putting cement dikes on both sides. But if you look at that, the moment you start fooling with that, and if you change the river from its natural course, you're asking for trouble unless you have very, very stringent rules as to how you're going to deal with it. In Talisay and the Mananga River, they had the dikes. There was such a big volume of water, it simply overflowed the dikes. Unfortunately, you had the housing developments on the other side. And then, of course, the water went right through it with the thing. You have to look at what they call the ridge to reef planning when you're doing something. So if you only do the flood control in the bottom part of your watershed and forget what's happening in the top part of your watershed, you're automatically in for a hard time, because you cannot. It's a continuum. It's not something where you can take and do it piecemeal with the thing. You show the pictures here of the river, the one you have right now with all of the people living along the river, and then you have the dike system, which is not very high there from what you can see. It doesn't take much water to go over that, and once it goes over, then it affects everything on the other side of the thing. And if you have a very large volume of water, then you end up the speed coming down the hill. You add that to it, and then you end up with a mess like you have there. Unfortunately, a number of people lost their lives because they couldn't get out. They thought they were safe where they were,
Okay.
and they weren't with the thing.
So this one is an example of an overflow, but we've also seen devastation in subdivisions and real estate development. And the common observation that you can hear from residents is the water rose so fast. Can you explain to our viewers what exactly happened?
Okay. Well, again, you start at the top. When you have heavy rains in the upper part of your watershed, and if you look at our watersheds, they're fairly steep.
Yeah.
So the water gains speed as it comes down. And let's say you have one little creek to begin with, and then you add 5 or 10 others, and they all have volumes of water. That water joins in the one river that empties out the watershed near the bottom. As you go down, it gets faster and faster as it travels down the slopes and whatnot. And then when it hits something, if it's channeled into an area, it takes out the area. Again, you can't blame it on the water because it's going to the ocean with the thing. But if you have such a volume, and then you add the fact that we have very little forest in the uplands, that would slow the water down. If you have a heavy rain like that, if you have 30 or 40 centimeters, your forest may slow it down. It's not going to stop it. But then
Yes.
what happens is that you blocked all the inflow areas into the ground. Now, again, there's a very good presentation. It's a video that was done and with an explanation. It's called Cebu's Flood Disaster Isn't Random. It's built on the island's geology, and you have to look at limestone. Now, limestone is one of the most sensitive systems that you have because it's prone to slides, for landslides. It's full of cracks unless you have some very hard stuff like marble that's not going to crack. But most of it will crack in one, and then and then what happened? Then you had the earthquake in Bogo with the thing, and that exasperated the situation. It may have opened more cracks. And once they get inside, they had an interesting picture of Lamak in Pinamungahan with this tremendous amount of water coming out of the side of the mountain. Well, that's from what I could tell, is from the cave system. So remember, underneath limestone, it can be very hollow. And that's where your drinking water is why people live in limestone, because it's very good water. But when it becomes saturated, that has a lot of pressure. That continues, your tubod down below where it comes out, that overflows. So it's a multiplication of the water as you go down the hill. It may have been fine at the very top, but by the time it gets down to the more level areas, you have a roaring flash flood. And that's actually if you remember in 1983 when the Mananga Bridge was taken out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the same type of flood. Here you have more houses that were built along the floodplain and in a precarious position and whatnot, and you can see the damage.
Okay.
You can't stop water like that. You just have to get out of the way.
Okay. Talking about floodplains, as we can see on the video of the Talisay of the Mananga River, most of the houses that were affected by the floodwaters were in the floodplains or were used to be Mananga River but dried up. So are there government laws that states that this should not be a residential area?
Well, if you look at a river system itself without any people, if you're in a forest area, there's a 40-meter wide edge to the river that's supposed to be protected. That's the law. If you're in an agricultural area, it's supposed to be 20 meters wide. And then when you get down in the city, it's 3 meters wide. That's not supposed to have anything there. It's supposed to be open land where you can have trees or bamboo or whatever you want to put along it. But the moment you put houses in it, you're asking for trouble for the thing. So the zone, you have to look at your zoning laws, and the fact that the zone, this doesn't go back to the fact that they have water. It goes back to the zoning itself and the protection. And let me go back a little bit to this whole thing. If you look at everything in the uplands here, and especially Cebu, the primary reason for doing something is economic. It's how much can I sell it for, or how much is the land worth, or what can I, if I build a subdivision, how much per square meter can I sell it for? So it becomes an economic problem, but they forget that everything depends upon the natural environment that surrounds what you're doing with the thing. And sometimes when the natural environment is upset, if you want to use that term, and you have a typhoon come in, and it has heavy rain. Now, remember, people don't realize you had, I think, the winds were, over 100, 125 kilometers an hour. When you have rain like that, and it's raining, that rain is not coming vertical. It's coming in horizontal. When Faye Wallad was alive, when we worked with her, he said, it's like taking a fire hose and directing the fire hose at a building. That's the force of the water from the rain that's coming in with 100 and 125 kilometer an hour winds and whatnot. So you have that damage, and then you have the accumulation. And then, of course, remember that the water coming down the hillside is carrying soil with it
Yes.
and rocks and pebbles and whatnot. And that's like taking sandpaper and over to some of these areas. And the damage is not only from the water, but it's the residue that's left over. And you can see that if you drive around Cebu City now, you have piles and piles of dirt and rock and whatnot that's come down, as you see in your pictures here with the thing. There you have another potential problem for disease later on, because that's not clean water that you have. It's mixed with everything. So
There,
you, yeah,
they-
go ahead.
yeah, for a layperson like me, because we went to the back portion of Compostela yesterday, there's something actually that looks odd for a layperson like me. And what I'm referring to, when we passed through the lowlands, and then there were also bodies of water or waterways, they were not flooded. But when we reached the upland, that's where the flooding happened, and it's
Yeah.
severe case of flooding. And it's actually odd for a layperson like me, because why did the water stay in the upland and it did not flow downstream?
Okay, well, if it doesn't, if it has no way to get into the ground, to be absorbed by the ground, and this is where you have your deforestation comes in. There's nothing to hold it. So even if you have a heavy rain, the water's going to be moving fairly fast. So even in the uplands, they have what they should have, or what they call sponge areas. And sponge areas are protected because the water can go in and it can sit in it for a while and be absorbed into the groundwater. You don't have that in areas where you have no trees. You have buildings and whatnot. So you look. I suspect that the ones where you had no flooding damage at all is the water went around it. For whatever reason, you'd have to look at the geology of the area too. Remember, it's not even. It's not a flat plain. They have hills and they have gullies in it and whatnot. So if you were lucky enough to be on the other side of where it was flooding, good for you with the thing.
Okay.
If you look at the picture you have now with the curve of the river, if you have a big flood, that flood is probably going to do its own shortcut. With the thing, it may have had a big bend in it and whatnot, which is fine, the normal river. But when you have such a heavy volume of water coming down, it probably would tend to shoot across it rather than, which is a natural process over many, many years. That's what the water will do. But you have what they have a term, I don't know, speed kills. Whether it's an automobile that's overspeeding, or whether it's a river that's going so fast that you can't stop it. And again, you get out of the way. That's about the only thing you can do. Unfortunately, a lot of these people had no warning.
Yes, it was.
That's another thing we don't have here. In Legazpi, they have a very good warning system, which tells you if you have so much rain in the mountains, automatically it triggers signals down below that you better be prepared to move, or there's a flood coming or whatnot. We don't have that here, from what I understand with the thing. So it's an early warning system that may be one of the solutions that we can put in. Is if I have X number of centimeters of water in the upper part of the watershed, automatically that information should be channeled to the DRM people, so the disaster would know, get ready. And then you can send out warnings to people that we have heavy mountain rains. It may be sunny down here, but it may be a terrific storm in the mountains.
Yes.
So it's not uniform.
Yeah, it happened a lot of times. Like people in the lowlands suddenly feel flooding when it's not raining, but there's heavy rain in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Bill.
One of the other things here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead. You asked the question.
Yes, Bill. Regarding the watersheds, that's Mananga, Kutkut, Lusaran, and there's Butuanon. Butuanon is another river system, but now after the flood, people are talking again of master plan. I think I've been hearing master plan for the last 20 years, but I don't know what happened to the master plans which we have spent millions of pesos. But if the flood control projects that was installed in these river systems didn't work, because as you said, water finds its way when it's obstructed. Apparently, we have changed
The flow.
the flow because of the floodplains being already occupied by subdivisions, by housing developments.
Yeah.
The developments are already there. What do you think can be done so if there's that another volume of water, there will be less damage to properties and there will be less lives lost?
Okay. First of all, you have yeah. It's Ida was saying in the background here. It's a change in values. You have to stop looking at the economic return first, and figure out what's the environmental return. Remember, if you have a good environmental program, you get benefits from that. And flood mitigation or slowing of water is one of them. You get the cooling effect of the trees and whatnot with the thing. You get the biodiversity. Your farming systems are much better. So it begins with it's the attitude. One of the things that we teach when we're working with schools is try to strengthen an environmental ethic. And of course, you're familiar with ethics is how you make decisions. So what we try to do is get the people to make better environmental decisions. A good friend of mine once told me, he said, if you have a watershed and you have people living in it, who are the actual de facto resource managers? In other words, who's actually doing the resource management? And he said, it's not the government, it's not the NGOs, it's the person who's standing on a hillside with a bolo in his hand or her hand and deciding, do I cut the tree down or do I just trim some of the branches that I need for firewood? That's your resource manager. So what we have to do is get people thinking about better resource management at the local level and at the situ, barangay, and then at the municipal or city level and whatnot. But it's a mindset change. So we can't have economics. One of the things that I talked about last time is that the NADA finally put the Committee for Environment as a separate committee equal with the other committees. Before it was under economics. And it has a tendency to be lost under the economic planning and whatnot, and it's like an afterthought. But the thing is that the environment is going to affect anything you do. I mean, it doesn't matter if you have a business, how are you going to conduct that business if you have a meter of water in your store? If you go out to the airport, which I came back from Davao yesterday, I think it's Wilcon is one of the big department stores along the way, and they have all of their furniture outside because the whole store flooded.
Robinson.
And then Robinson's was partially underwater for some of it. So it's not only the business people. They think, oh, I have a good business and whatnot. Forget what it's going to be when it's raining. I'll take my chances on it. And then all of a sudden you come down with this, I don't know if what they're calling it, a 1 in 25 year, 1 in 10 year flood that you would get with the thing. It's going to happen again. You can guarantee that because climate change has made the typhoons stronger. And the damage, of course, is stronger when you have a stronger typhoon. So even if some of them tend to move south now, we're expecting at least 3 more storms before the end of the year. Hopefully they will be smaller storms rather than major typhoons, but we're still going to get hit. And those poor people in northern Luzon, they just had a big storm, and then they said Uwan went through the area again at a super typhoon strength. So it's very hard to deal with all of these problems and whatnot if your mindset is again, what's my economic return of whatever I'm doing, whether it's a farm or whether it's a business in the community or let's say it's a flood control project. that is there, I'm sorry to say, is simply for the money rather than what's the long-term effect.
Yes.
Now, the other thing with you mentioned the master plans. One of the biggest problems in this country, and I've been here 50 years, so I'm familiar with a lot of the government stuff because I've worked for some government agencies. The planning horizon for a mayor is 3 years. In other words, that's the time he's in office. Fine, if I can get 2 more elections out of it, I'll be there for 9 years. But if I have somebody come in my opponent comes in and my opponent wins the election, a lot of times my projects that were started during my term are cut off and new projects are put in. When we're dealing with watershed management, which is all this water and everything in it, you're talking 20 to 30 years to come up to a very stable program where everybody understands. The other thing that we have is another friend of mine told me, he said, Central Cebu protected landscape is a giant real estate deal.
Oh.
And if you look at that, the people are, you have the richer people down here, they go in and they buy lots or they buy the puesto, the tax declaration, and then they build a summer home there or a cottage or whatnot, and then the people move out. But where do they move? They sit there at the edge of the property they once moved.
But
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
But Bill, the property under the protected Central Cebu protected landscape, it's not supposed to be for real estate, correct?
Right. For the thing, it's what it is. It's supposed to be. If there is private property because it was declared in 2008 with a thing, but you're supposed to have an annotated title with what you can do and cannot do in that property, and that's not followed at all.
So
I think-
it's the DN. What agency is supposed to monitor this?
Well, okay, it's supposed to be the Protected Area Management Board, which is run. DNR is the convener of the Protected Area Management Board. But here you run into how many members do you have? Like I think it's 70 plus, because all the barangay captains are members, and then you have representatives of the different either city or municipality, and then 5 NGOs
Uh,
out of the whole thing. Yeah.
this one is for. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, go ahead. No, but the thing is that what's the priority of your barangay captains?
Okay.
Economic income for his constituents or her constituents, not the environment.
And
So-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So
with the thing.
this one actually is for our viewers, no, so that they can also do their part either on taking action or supporting the action. We've asked our guests about this question, but I think you're also among the experts that our viewers can learn from. We are hearing terms like national parks, which eventually
Yeah.
some of the sections were, as you mentioned, converted into protected landscape. Can you educate us more? What's the difference between the two?
Okay, well, if you look, they had Central Cebu National Park, which is, I think, 1934 when it was declared. The whole part of Lusaran and the surrounding. You had Sudlan National Park, which is part of Sudlan, which no longer exists because of the cave systems up there. What happened was they changed the designation from a national park because the boundaries, theoretically, there's supposed to be nobody inside of national park. That doesn't hold in Cebu and a lot of other areas, like Canlaon National Park with a thing. The only place I can think where you don't have people are at the edge of the volcano. I mean, up on the top. That's the only place you don't find people. But here, a protected landscape, it broadens the area, and they used to have, I think, 7 land uses within it, from strict protection all the way down to multiple use. Then they came along and made it protection and multiple use. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. There are too many areas that have to be protected. But there's another thing people don't realize. They have an 18% slope.
Yeah, the law.
The law says the 18% slope and above is forest land. Okay, and then below it is where you can have your A&D lands and whatnot. That's the national law, except Cebu is exempt, as are the Cordilleras. So that means I can go in above 18% and do what I want with the thing because I don't have the rule that says it's supposed to be forest. So you have a problem here. Can somebody plug in the computer? Just a minute. My battery says
Okay.
it wants some. It's hungry.
Okay.
This is just the moment. I got it.
No, the reason actually I got interested about the question because my next question supposedly is at least when his battery is no longer hungry, is why is Cebu exempt from these guidelines or laws?
Bill, why was Cebu exempted?
Well, this had to do with the governorships in the past, because again, it's a real estate deal. It's you want to sell the land, you make money off the land. Besides, a lot of Cebu is above 18%, so that would exclude a lot of the land where you have the subdivisions now with the thing and the type of structures you should have. You shouldn't have farming on slopes without proper soil conservation measures with the thing, but that doesn't happen because people claim the land and then they have somebody come in as a tenant. I don't want to use the term tenant, but that's what it is.
Yes. Okay.
So it's somebody else is farming the land. The owner or the perceived owner lives in the lowland with the thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah, Bill, from national park, it has been renamed to protected area. I think there's so much developments in the upland, even inside the watershed. There's for me, like we cannot. There's no way we can control them right now. But what can be done? Is there still remedy for us so that there will be, to avoid another Typhoon Tino?
Okay, well, you're going to have to get serious about implementing the rules and regulations you have. If you don't, you still end up with these flash floods. And the people down below, one of the other things is they say, well, we don't have enough funds to protect the uplands when in the protected area. A number of years ago, when they were on the Protected Area Management Board, they wanted to talk to MCWD about adding 1 peso per cubic meter that would go into a trust fund for protection of the upland areas with whatever types of activities you have. And water is cheap here. If you look at the cost up to 30 cubic meters, which is 1 cubic meter a month per day per household, it's very cheap. Adding 1 peso is not going to be a big expense for people, but we estimated a number of years ago that would raise at least 20 million a year just for the protection of the watershed, because everybody expects the people who are living in the upland areas to protect the watershed so that I can drink the water down here that I get through the Hakloop and Weir system and TISA and MCWD and the delivery. But that hasn't happened yet. We also had suggested that those people that are there legitimately, not the ones that have moved in, and sort of, again, squatted on the area or claimed it for some reason, pay them a stipend per month to protect a certain area of land that has to be protected. In other words, if you have a steep slope and it has to have trees on it, you can initially do the restoration work, but then pay them a monthly stipend in order to protect that land. Maybe it's one family for 10 hectares or 5 hectares. And then that fund that you have generated by the water consumption down below is used to pay them to monitor it. All you have to do is take a motorcycle and go along the roads and the pathways and look to see, is there any damage? If there is damage, then you go to the person. Now, when we were working in 1978 for Comstock Kruger Lehmeyer International was the consultancy firm that did the planning. They had a Comunero system, which is the old Spanish way of doing it. They hired one family per kilometer. They supplied the shovel and the pick, and after every rain, the person was out there filling in the holes. I could go 60 kilometers an hour from Adlawan to Lusaran, any kind of weather, because the road was in very good condition. You can't do that now. But use the same system in order to protect swaths of the watershed that need protection. And then the DNR and the other POMBI members can, I think they have, we used to have, in 2016, I think there were 5 forest guards for 28,000 hectares. Now you're not gonna protect a whole lot of land with 5
Yeah.
people and 28,000 hectares.
Yes, Bill, the government have we are very fond of giving aids, right, to the
Yeah.
poorest of the poor. Like we have the 4 piece, we have tupad. So maybe we can convert the tupad to just
Protection.
street sweeping to maintain portion of land
Yeah.
for. I mean, better convert this to a more realistic.
So that there's also some action that's needed from them instead of just giving them dole outs.
Yes.
You've mentioned protection, no, of and how potentially the, let's call it its name, the squatters can actually be leveraged, no, into this protection. What exactly, and this is for a layperson like me, what exactly do you mean when you say protection? Is it reforestation?
Our foundation does not use the term reforestation
Okay.
anymore.
Okay.
And the reason is it has a negative connotation. Because if you look at from what I understand, if you look at the statistics, the Philippines, the entire country, 30 million hectares, has been reforested 2.5 times. If you look at all the money that was spent for the reforestation of the thing. And you tend to get monocultures. If you think of Bohisan Dam, you have monocultures of teak, you have monocultures of gemelina, you have mahogany and whatnot, which don't do any good. They're exotics. When we talk about restoration, we're talking using a rainforestation type of system where you would plant maybe 20, 30 species per hectare. So some are deep-rooted, some are shallow-rooted. If you're dealing with a riparian zone, which is along the river, you don't just plant bamboo, because if you have a flood like that, all your bamboo is going to end up in the ocean because it's shallow-rooted. So you put in 2 or 3 deep-rooted trees, then put in a clump of bamboo, another 2 or 3 trees, and then a clump of bamboo. You mix the system. And you make sure that you don't have structures along it or the thing. Mother Nature takes care of itself. It'll regenerate itself if you let it. So in some of these areas, it may be just protecting it. Or what we do, we work with Ayala Land in Pumal, Cebu for their former area for their structural, the subdivision that they were going to build. But in the 65 hectares, we have 110 species of trees. Many of them are not, well, they're native trees that we put in, and we keep enriching it. So this becomes a natural education area at the same time when you have this type of thing. So
Yes.
we found out here when we ran a watershed tour from 1996 to 2013, and we put 75,000 people through that tour. 70% of them were students, but there were 23 sectors. Nobody could talk about moving a watershed boundary after they went through the tour, because that's set by Mother Nature. That's not set by, unless you bulldoze the whole thing. So people began to realize what it was. A friend of ours is looking at, we're actually reviving that tour so that we teach the people in the lowlands what is really a watershed, because you don't see it. If you live in the city, chances are you don't get above over the first ridge line. So it doesn't dawn on you where all this is happening. So unless you see it, well, seeing is believing, of course, is the
Yes.
common term. So, and you need that in order for the people down here to understand that they have a responsibility too.
Yes.
It's not just the people in the uplands with it.
Bill, in our
Yeah.
earlier conversation, it's really about not just thinking of the economic things, but on environment. So, no matter how many flood control projects we're going to install along the river systems, it will never work until we fix the environmental issues upstream. Correct?
Yeah, exactly, because that's where it all starts.
And
It doesn't start. It doesn't start in the lowland. If you have a big storm down here, the water disappears right away. It starts in the upland, and then it washes all the way down here for the thing. So that's not going to stop.
And-
What we can do is slow it down. Yes, go ahead.
And this one, and I'm not exactly sure now if you're the person who can answer this, but I'm just throwing it out there just in case you're among those who can answer this. For the South Road properties, these are reclaimed lands. Do you have an idea on where these soils actually came from? Were they outside of Cebu or they were taken inside of Cebu? Because this is 300 hectares.
Yeah, I know. Both. I know some of it came from Naga, if
Yes.
I remember correctly.
Yes,
They
we
were
are right.
And then part of it was from Leyte. They were barging the former governor. I understand one of her businesses was barging in material for the thing. You brought up another point that if you look at quarrying is one of the problems that they've had. Illegal quarrying, you can do quarrying if you're very careful about how you do it. But there's still a lot of illegal sand and gravel collection with the thing in the Mananga River, and I'm sure these other rivers that you have. That has to be curtailed. And it means from what people tell me, they said the people who are doing the illegal sand and gravel collection, the mano, not the big dump trucks or whatnot, they're out there at dusk and dark doing it. And of course, your law enforcement tends not to go out there during the dark and whatnot for the thing. So you have to look at a program of protection that is actually 24 hours in some cases if you're going to stop it. For the thing.
I think the current Governor Pam Baricuatro, issued a stoppage order to all quarry, but these are the big quarry operators, not the mano-mano. We know that there are those who are doing the mano-mano quarry in the Mananga River, but I'd like to pursue on the floodplains. In Mananga River, majority of the houses that were affected were in the floodplains.
Yes,
we can
exactly.
see. So now, planting a tree is not something like, okay, we plant now, it's good tomorrow. It takes time. It takes time. So it takes time for us to fix what's happening in the upland. But while government is thinking of fixing that problem, what can be done so that if there's another Tino coming, there will be no more, at least
it will not recur.
It will not recur. The damage to property and loss of lives. What should be done to the floodplain areas?
Well, right now, I suspect one of your biggest problems is basura.
Yes.
Where I mean that's clogged a lot of your drainage ways, and that, of course, when you clog the drainage way, the water goes over the surface. So that's one thing. It's a better management of your trash disposal systems. And again, it's funny where we are in Camputao. We used to segregate our garbage. You put it in a tin can, the metal and whatnot. We still say nothing organic goes off of our property because I compost it for our nursery. But that's one thing you could do for the wet organic material. I think they're working on that now. But the thing is, what happens is that the ones who are doing the segregation are the workers on the garbage truck.
Yeah.
So you give it them, and they're making money. So that means they're not being paid enough for what they're doing if they have to sit there and divide all and try to get information. So it doesn't do us any good to segregate.
So the flooding is really a very complicated problem, not just the trees in the upland, but downstream it's the drainage filled with garbage.
Garbage.
Yeah, that's one major thing. So yeah, I think you hit on a very important point. There's no one solution to this. It's going to be a number. But the local people have to be educated. Okay, what can I do in my house?
Yes.
And then, like we have we have three major containers, the barrels that we use for rainwater. And that I use for my nursery, but you can use it for cleaning the area, for flushing toilets if you need be with the thing. There's actually an ordinance that says you're supposed to have rainwater catchments, but again, it's a implementation is weak sometimes. Every subdivision is supposed to have a system of cleaning the water, which they don't. That's another thing you can look at with the thing. It's not going to be solved in a couple of months, I can tell you that. It's going to. I listened to the vice governor when I was on the other program the other day. They have a comprehensive master plan, which is multifaceted. And so I would have check into that one because the other thing is that I worked on with Faye Wallag and some of the others, the master plan for Cebu's water. And we spent 3 years writing the thing. And I was part of the environmental side of it and not the engineering side, but they have I think it's 10, 15 or so different sections that deal with bulk carriers and deal with the restoration work and deal with the pricing and whatnot.
Yes.
As far as I know, they still do not have the implementing rules and regulations.
3 years after.
Yeah. So this is a problem too. You can't implement it if you don't have how you're going to do it.
Yes.
The thing. So that's another thing that it's there. It's very, very comprehensive.
Okay.
But that covers the whole island. It's not just for Metro Cebu.
Yeah, flooding is a problem. Another problem is our dwindling water supply. But I think the matter on the dwindling water supply will call for another interview with you, Bill. That will be another scheduled interview because that is equally important, our water supply. And I know you and Ida are one of the advocates really for a safe water for Cebu, but I'm running out of time. It was a very insightful conversation. So we hope we can have another time with you to have more insights and maybe call for government for action that flood control projects are just band-aids. They're not the real solutions. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I agree. It's more of the change of values of people to really better understand what the problem is.
The importance of environmental ethics. No, I
Yes.
captured that in the early part of the interview.
Yes. So, Bill,
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, and thank you, Ida, for chipping into the conversation.
So it's been my pleasure. Anytime, just let me know. I'll set
Okay.
my schedule.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. Okay, so that's
Okay.
William Granert of the Soil and
Water Conservation Foundation.
They've been there for a while, and they're very good sources of information. Kanang scientific gid ba, but agreed. Dugay na gid kani bitong master plan, daghan na kay master plan, pero mo na bisag unsa ka comprehensive, bisag unsa kanindot imong master plan, kung wala gi-implement kay ang executive nga naglingkod 3 years ra iyang pananaw. But this master plan
I think he mentioned 30 years now.
30 years. So kinahanglan sa siguro i-change sa siguro na to ang value sa atong officials, but anyway, that's a long conversation. And thank you for those who joined the conversation nga kanagid no living si Jay Anpan, no living in the floodplain. So I think makita gyud na nato, pero mo lagi na nasa responsibility ang LGU ana. Kana pod ang mga sitting executives aware ba sad sila nga kaning floodplain dili dapat puy-an kanang mo lagi na complicated pareha sa baha, complicated kayo, but we'll have other time for that. So That wraps up this edition of Beyond the Headlines. We hope today's conversation helped shed light on the bigger picture behind the story.
We'd like to thank our guest, Mr. William Granert, for helping us connect the dots in ways that matter. Thank you for being with us today.
I'm Mildred Galarpe.
And I'm DJ Moises.
Thank you and good
afternoon.
afternoon.